Since 1995, over 26,000 international students from all walks of life join the British investigators' training courses in anomalous phenomena, including ufology, paranormal and supernatural, parapsychological study, anomalous phenomena, science, hypnotherapy, spiritualism, astrology, astronomy, cryptozoology, and many other areas. Our certified self-study courses will teach you how to assess, analyze, engage, formulate, document, and be cognizant of all types of phenomena, suitable for light workers and starseeds, curious personalities and inquisitive minds, skeptics alike and truth seekers. For more information, please visit www.stellaruniversity.com.
I'll be talking with author and researcher Simon Lewis, who has written a book called The Two-Faced Moon, about what might be lurking in the craters on the so-called dark side of our nearest neighbour. Tonight we've even got a world exclusive to show you, well, technical gremlins allowing, that has the potential to make worldwide headlines. So what a show we've got tonight. Simon, welcome to our frazzled start.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me onto the show.
Not at all, not at all. I'm going to show the camera your book. This is your book, The Two-Faced Moon.
Yeah, that is.
If you can see that. You describe this as a search for the truth. So let's have a little bit of background about you and your search.
Right, well, it all started basically with a flatmate that I was introduced to. We shared a flat. He'd worked in the military in the past, and he told me these incredible stories, which at first I thought, this can't be true, but anyway, he persuaded me. And from there, that was from the 80s into the 90s, I started getting involved in the actual subjects, and I joined a group called the North Lancashire UFO Investigation Group, and at the time, there was a huge network of groups. So you had these organisations all cooperating and obviously dealing directly with the public over unusual sightings. We all had a little job. Mine was aircraft and identifying them, and also trying to help people identify what they'd actually seen in the skies, which in some cases could be explained. In other cases went under the category of unidentified. Okay. And in most cases they were identified. So that led on to which was termed as the flying triangle in its day, which was connected with military and unknowns, because of course I wouldn't be sat here if it wasn't about unknowns. And from there we started coming across things to do with the moon. And this was a rather amazing subject, that possibly we went to the moon, and looking at the evidence which I've got, we had already been, there was somebody already there was an indication of artefacts, and just about everything conceivable. You think about it and you're not going to be wrong, because it's all there. I
think it's important to state that we did do a programme a little while ago on this channel about moon landings and looking at faked evidence, if you like, looking at the photographs, the still images from the moon, looking at the films from the moon. And a lot of them, there appeared to be evidence that they were not shot on the moon. They may have been shot somewhere else. Now, it's not mutually exclusive necessarily with your theories that there are structures on the moon and people on the moon. Maybe they're not human, because it could be that that's why they faked the moon shot. So I don't know how you want to kind of reconcile those two.
Well, it's a good point made there. I mean, I must make it quite clear that I've never actually found any evidence to indicate, to put the word alien in there, but there's certainly, from the evidence that we've looked at, indications that the moon has been visited, whether it's by us or somebody else. That's the big question. And as far as I'm concerned, the Apollo programme was all about going there and having a close look, and it was staged. You know, there's clear indications that, you know, from the start of the Apollo programmes and even before then, that NASA was up to something else. And from leaked documents which we've looked at in the 90s, the National Security Agency was well and truly involved running the Apollo space program.
So it wasn't NASA, it was NSA. It was NSA,
yes,
not
yeah.
NASA.
Well, as we know, NASA stands for Never a Straight Answer. You know, well, they had somebody else running it.
NSA doesn't even exist officially.
It doesn't even exist officially. So, you know, we must always never forget that the Apollo astronauts were military trained. You know, you're talking about a military operation here. Sticking 3 blokes under the end of a rocket takes a lot of courage. Arguments are, did it go there? I understand all of that on the hoax scenarios. As far as
even the hoax scenario allows for the possibility that they did go. It's just that the images that they presented to us on Earth were not evidence of them having gone.
No, and I agree. I agree in certain areas, but you know, which we will see later in the show with hopefully the footage we've got. We will definitely see something quite amazing.
Well, we have got an extraordinary exclusive a bit later on, so please do stay tuned. And obviously, don't forget to send in your text questions as well. 87778 with the word "edge," then a space, then your question. So, you know, moving on, you got interested in the moon. Were there any documents that you had at your disposal that gave you some evidence of strange things on the moon? There
was always documents available. Now, I'd like to start with a subject which I think is really important that everybody knows about, and this is chronological. We're going to go slightly off course, chronological reported lunar events.
So that's over a period of time?
Over a period of time, yeah. And this was a NASA technical report, NASA TRR 277, basically. So it's got its reference code there, available from the Department of Commerce, I must point out to everybody, so you can actually...
You can still buy it.
You can still buy it. It's expensive, probably now. I got it about 10 years ago, it's $40.
But you've got a copy, so
I've got a copy.
Cut to the,
yeah, this is, if you want to just focusing on that, that's the copy. And you may notice have I got them in the right direction? OK. Barbara Middlehurst and Patrick Moore, who produced this. Now, this is...
Patrick Moore.
Our Patrick Moore.
The guy who lives in Chelsea and
that's right. This
plays
is
the glockenspiel.
That's it. This is absolutely amazing because this is something that they put together of unusual events recorded on the moon by astronomers over a period of 200 to 300 years. Now, it's fascinating because astronomers were talking of unusual red spots, they were talking of strange fluorescent, unusual lights within craters, especially the Aristarchus crater, which is just about one of the most fascinating, which is on this side, and I believe
Let's go to a picture of that.
We have a picture.
Which one is that?
Which is we're coming up to that one now. Sorry, I've got everything in the wrong order. 17.
Picture 17, please. Can we see that one?
Yes.
Aristarchus crater.
Yeah. Now, this particular crater, what I find very important about this is that even Neil Armstrong, when he was in the lander, the Eagle as they call it, even saw something himself. And as infuriating as it is, it was never made public apart from through ham radio, where we've been able to pick up manuscripts of conversations, which are usually...
there it is, we've got it.
We've got it, yes, that's the one. So this particular crater has had over 300 different things reported within it.
Going back to what sort of time? How long?
Well, you're going over 200 years.
200 years. So for 200 years since the start of astronomy.
Exactly.
People have been seeing weird stuff happening in this crater.
Yes, and basically in the report here, which we have, this continued up to about 1965. So we've got even in recent years reports of things going on, and not just in this crater itself, but in and around the crater and other areas of the moon.
Is there anything on the picture here of the crater that looks unusual?
Well, this particular picture obviously does show you where you can get light shining on one side much brighter than the other as darkness covers the other side. But Neil Armstrong actually stated that when he was flying over, he noted unusual light coming from the crater.
Wasn't it fluorescence?
Fluorescence, yes. And this, I feel, was very important, because if you've got Patrick Moore and Barbara Middlehurst producing reports about these unusual things, then surely it's very important that Neil Armstrong is also recording this himself. And, of course, it wasn't. When they went round to the other side of the moon, the transmission was lost, And that was it, basically.
And they came back out and never said another word about it.
Nothing was said.
OK, well, so we're sort of starting into this subject now, aren't we? We've got a history going back 200 years or so of anomalous events on the moon.
That's correct.
We've got a report that Patrick Moore was involved in, and he's certainly no conspiracy theorist, is he? He certainly never it says that he supports ideas of alien life in our universe or anything like that. But he's put together this report for NASA, which was 1968.
Surprising. Updated in 1971, which I couldn't get. I don't know why. For some reason, they wouldn't let me have anything else. Now, NASA decided after 1971, in 1972, it was renamed Transient Lunar Phenomena. So another name for chronological reported lunar events. They decided to get different scientists and astronomers together to report things. So they get together, they see something, and they form a group, and then they discuss it, they report it. But for some strange reason, it didn't happen.
Right.
It disintegrated, and that was basically the end of the whole subject. And this is quite interesting because this is after the 1972 moon landings and the last one,
moon landing was
which was Apollo 17.
Yes.
Yeah, and as we know, Jack Smith, who was on there, was the only geologist they sent to the moon.
Right.
So you've got a rather difficult situation where you're plonking all these people on the moon, and really they're not really trained in what they're looking at. They're trained in picking it up and bringing it back with samples.
And playing golf.
And playing golf. And
driving the lunar buggy, if indeed they went, and so did it.
That's it, yes, yeah.
OK, so they sat on this, basically, and they squashed it, and it didn't happen after this date. But they had all this evidence going back hundreds of years. OK, so, all right, so moving on from there, then, what kept this flame alive for you? What evidence was presenting itself after this time, after the Apollo landings, or looking at research from the Apollo landings?
Well, it was interesting, certainly with lunar orbiters, that they actually had pictures. If we look at frame 10, which actually shows us a cloud formation over a crater, I believe it's the excuse me.
This is a picture of a crater.
Crater Vitello, yeah.
With what looks like clouds. And I've got to say, it does look like clouds, doesn't it? And it's hard to think what else could have that luminosity and reflectivity.
Well, these are cone-shaped, of course, as we can see.
Yeah.
Now, this particular cloud formation, there is a photograph of it. I don't think we've got this, but this is good enough with a close range. Because if anybody wants to say, oh, this could be just anything, this could have been photographed on Earth, there are other photographs which indicate it's on the moon and taken by lunar orbiters. And there is a photograph which shows it from above with these clouds running over the top of the crater. And what's interesting is they're almost like circumulus clouds.
Well, haven't we got picture 11 as well? Should we go to picture 11?
Well, picture 11 is not of clouds. I believe it's showing you something unusual in the crater.
It looks like clouds to me.
Right, well, right. It could be, yeah. It's difficult sometimes with pictures whether they're clouds or not. That one has got something in the crater, which I wanted,
yes, at the top
which
there,
I wanted to discuss. But as we're on this particular one now, if everybody who's watching this show wants to look to the left, to the crater, which is
the biggest crater,
not the biggest. No, go up to the middle left. There's a crater there. If you actually look in it, there's something very unusual.
In that crater? Yes,
in that crater.
Isn't there? What on earth is that?
Right, the general suggestions is that it's some sort of base. Moon base, I'll say it, moon base, and it is unusual. Now, this particular crater is taken from a normal astronomy book, and it doesn't say anything.
It's taken from... Is the picture taken
you can
from
get
space?
That anywhere.
This is taken from...
Yeah, well, this is photographed by a lunar orbiter again.
OK.
So, but nothing is really discussed about this crater. And this is a good time to move on, of course, because we can start looking at the unusual pictures, such as frame 12.
OK, let's have frame 12 then, because this is an amazing photograph, isn't it? This one. I've spent some time looking at this, thanks to you bringing it to my attention.
Lunar backside.
This is on the dark side of the moon, so-called, but it's important to explain, I suppose, that the dark side of the moon isn't dark the whole time. It's just it's just always turned away from the Earth, so
that's right.
We can't see it from the Earth. But of course, it gets light just like the other side does. So this particular crater, describe what you can see in there for me, Simon, if you will.
Right, well, firstly, I must point out it's known as the unknown crater, and that's probably to do with the size of the crater, which I believe could be around 20 miles around its radius. So within there, what we seem to have is there's a dark object, if we go central to the picture, running across the picture. Now, in the past...
This thing that looks like a bridge, is it? This black line?
Looks like a bridge. And what
between two sort of peaks.
That's right. And above, at the end of the bridge, if you're heading towards the right, there seems to be what looks like a cross.
Yes.
Laid down.
So that's top right at the bottom of the crater.
That's right. And then, again, what's unusual about this crater is the track-type marks running up and down it.
It does look like it's got roads in it, doesn't it?
And there's a lot going on at the bottom, very unusual shapes.
So what are we saying? This is a mine?
This is possibly the first proof of some sort of mining operation going on. And through leaks we've read in the past and from contacts, they're saying that this is an old photograph of something that's not being operated in anymore.
So what would they have been mining?
Well, they would have been mining the valuable materials. I mean, we all, you know, in recent years, we've looked at helium-3.
Right, all right, we're going to go for a break now. If you'd like to text in your questions or comments, why not do so now? Just text EDGE, a space, and then your message to 87778. I will see you very soon, and I hope it all works. Welcome back to On the Edge with me, Theo Chalmers, and my special guest tonight, Simon Lewis. Simon, so just before the break then, we were talking about this unknown crater on the far side of the moon, the side we never see from Earth. If we could just perhaps bring up that picture again, please, number 12. Here it is, and you were just telling us that there's a lot of evidence here of mining activity.
There is,
and I was asking you before the break, what could they be mining? You said valuable minerals. Are there particular valuable minerals?
Well, helium-3, which has been in the press quite a few times. You know, helium-3, which is basically moon dust, if you want to go for the simpler sentence. You know, they were saying that this is so valuable that 25 tonnes of it could power the whole of the United States for a year. Now, what's coincidental, of course, is the space shuttle carries 25 tonnes, so whether or not that's just a coincidence, I don't know.
Well, it's not powering America, is it? They've got a crisis. Oh, no, they moved to another picture here. I don't know what happened there. Moon dust.
Well, this, again, is an example, you know, moon dust as a new, and this actually this is an article which was taken from, I think, maybe the Mail or the Express. And this actually talks about the helium-3 and tells us everything, basically, about its uses and how valuable it is.
Oh,
you know, we're struggling at the moment, as we all know, with energy problems, and it seems we already have an energy source somewhere else which is very valuable and would certainly change the world.
OK. I've got some questions here now from people who've texted in. Thank you for your text. I've got one here that says, what do you think about Firewalker? That's from H in Merseyside. Is that something you're familiar with? Do you know what
I've no idea.
No, we don't know what that is, I'm afraid.
That's a new one to me.
All right, would a human heart be able to function properly in a gravity low as the moon without circulation problems?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I'm not an expert in that area, but...
Well, they work in low Earth orbit, don't they,
yes,
human hearts? So I suppose the answer is yes.
Well, I would have thought so, yeah.
And then John from North Wales says, Simon, any stories arising from the Russian remote lunar landings?
Well, that's a good question, because, I mean, obviously it always seems to be NASA. That's the main, you know, have a good pick at NASA and let's have a go at what they're doing. But it's just starting with the Russians. I mean, we've actually got a picture as well, you know, which basically started this whole book.
Is this number 6?
Number 6, yeah.
Let's have number 6. This is a great picture. This is a Russian picture, isn't it?
And that's a very good question that's just been asked. This is from a Russian orbiter, and I believe this was before the moon landings of 1969.
So up towards the top right of this picture...
we've got this very unusual object, and this is the Imbrium area of the moon.
OK.
And it's amazing, this. Now, we found this picture in a Czechoslovakian publication, which was a very rare publication, and it's very unusual because it's Russian, and we've relied so much on photographs which are taken by NASA, of course. Now, We have presented this picture to people such as Richard Hoagland, famous for the glass structures, David Icke, and they've both been fascinated. Now, this was in the 90s, so we found this picture a long time ago. And we've even arranged with friends to, because it's on this side of the moon, you can actually have a good look. So somebody back in the 90s with a powerful enough telescope focused in on this and pretty much got a very similar picture. So it proved to us it was there and this wasn't hoaxed.
Well, is there any chance that that structure, because it clearly is a structure of some kind, even if it's a natural one, is there any chance that structure could be natural? Like the Giant's Causeway, for instance.
It could be natural, but I sent this to NASA, and the problem I have when it comes to communications with NASA is they send me a child's pack. Every
time you write to NASA, they send you a child's pack.
Yeah, I just want a logical answer. Can you explain this?
So if anybody wants some Christmas presents for the children that cost very little money, then send a letter to NASA and you'll get a child's pack.
And you actually get it sent in a printed matter envelope.
So that's probably to do with the rate of postage.
It must be, or it's something they've developed in space, I don't know.
But they don't answer your question.
No. So it's very infuriating. So you don't really get anywhere. So we're stuck with this incredible picture, and you can't move anywhere because nobody really wants to say anything.
So there is a sort of, what is apparently a building.
Yeah, yes.
On the moon, but they don't acknowledge it.
They don't acknowledge it, no.
OK, so, you know, let's talk about evidence. I mean, the thing about evidence is that, you know, there are explanations, aren't there? There are, you could say that there's, that what looks like that activity in that crater could just be natural phenomena, that building isn't a building, that those clouds aren't clouds, that those lights that people have seen for 200 years on the moon are natural phenomena of some kind. Well,
so, there is a simple answer to that. Let's have a closer look. But the problem is, they don't. And for some reason, they won't. And this won't happen because the National Security Agency runs everything.
But the Japanese have got a high-definition camera going around the moon at the moment, haven't they? Although they've only released a tiny bit of film.
Well, this is the problem.
Which is very odd because I've been back to their website several times and it's only that same bit of film that lasts about 3 minutes.
Yes, well, this is a problem, isn't it? I mean, you know, we've also got India.
India and China.
And China,
all going to the moon.
Yeah, and I talk about this in the book. You know, I mean, they're going to see something at some stage, but then again, you know, a lot of these objects are very small. You know, you're going to have to really focus to catch anything like a base or a structure.
You've got to know where you're looking.
You've got to know where you're looking.
And then look.
Yeah, and it depends, you know, I mean, NASA's, you know, or the NSA, or whoever you want to look at who's running the show, has pretty much dominated the moon from the start, with Russia slightly behind. And it depends how much they allow them all to do, because I'm sure they've all got written agreements in the background of what they can show and what they can't show.
So if there is a conspiracy, let us say for a moment that there is a conspiracy, that governments know about what's on the moon, and the ones that become capable of going to the moon with satellites, for instance, and cameras and even people possibly, are politely taken to one side and told, this is the state of what's happening up there. You know, these are the rules, if you like, of engagement.
Well, I don't think they'll do it that way. I think it'll be the typical, we've lost transmission. They'll just basically knock it out of the sky. You know, this
like the British, like the Milton Keynes satellite that went to Mars that didn't land.
It's the easiest option is just to jam the signals or actually damage the orbiters. You know, it's the easy option, and they can do it.
So but the Japanese satellite is working.
Yeah, because it depends how they go so far. It depends how far they go. I mean, if they're going to start releasing pictures, well, you know, somebody will step in. This is the way it works.
Because it goes without saying that the Japanese could fly over the places where the Apollo missions, the 6 missions that are supposed to have landed on the moon, landed, and take a picture of them.
They could do.
There would be the lunar rovers, there would be the base of the LEM, you know, and the flags and the bits of experimentation.
I honestly believe that anybody who's flown out of the atmosphere, there is going to be one big treaty, an agreement on this. You know, there is the, you know...
Well, the Russians, the Chinese, the Indians, the Japanese...
You know, they all put this...
European Space Agency.
Well, they all put... Well, yeah, European Space Agency is a prime example. You know, especially if you look at Mars Express at the moment, you know, there are pictures coming back from Mars. I'll just change the subject slightly.
Why not?
Which look like there are trees on Mars.
I've seen those pictures. They do look like trees.
They look like trees, and yet you ask ESA, you know, which I do every 2 weeks at the moment, as I'm a member of their emailing group, are these trees? And they do not answer you.
So
well, I'm asking a simple...
pack.
Well, I'm waiting for that, actually. They may do, yes, yeah. But they don't answer you, and this is the problem with everything. You're asking a simple question. Look, I've got this picture. I'm a bit confused because it's showing me something that tells me a different story.
And standing water. I mean, there's lots of evidence of standing water. I mean, we're not really talking about Mars today, are we?
No, we're talking about the moon, yeah.
But, you know, since we're on the subject, it does look like there's lots of standing water and even waterfalls.
Clementine probe.
Yes.
Military probe, I must mention. You know, it maps the moon and it discovers you know, water ice on the moon the size of Puerto Rico, 1.3 kilometres deep.
OK.
So you've got your water... It's just what you want.
This is in the public domain, is it?
And this has been in the newspapers, and you know, it's been, everybody knows about it now.
So there's
but
water
that
on
was
the
the
moon.
last that was said about it.
And since there's water, it's quite likely that there are clouds on the moon then, because water vapour can form clouds, and the sun, it gets pretty hot on the moon, doesn't it?
Well, it's funny. It's funny you should say that, because back in the you know, there was a big argument about water. You know, Director of Lunar Science, Richard Allenby, actually said there is no water whatsoever on the moon. You know, his statement was like in stone, no water. Patrick Moore, in one of his books, sorry, Patrick, I've mentioned your name here, but...
Well, once again.
You did say in your book, you know, I have to say this, that you will never find water on the moon. And it just shows you that the astronomers and the scientists can get it wrong. And here I am saying, right, well, you know, I might be wrong.
Well, asteroids are made of water, aren't they? They could crash on the moon and there would be water.
They can, but the problem was that we had a situation with... Now, was it Apollo 15 or it might have been Apollo 14 and Apollo 16. Anyway, there was talk about great eruptions of water on the moon on these two particular missions of 100 square miles, which lasted for 14 hours. Now, Richard Allenby was saying, you know, there isn't water, you know, and one of the general arguments is it was the water tanks off the, you know, the orbiter and the lander. But Dr. John Freeman and Dr. H. Ken Hills at the time said, no, this is water on the moon erupting. And this goes back to our chronological reported lunar events, or transient lunar phenomena.
Why would it be erupting?
Well, it's erupting. Well, it's
volcanic activity, like under pressure or something.
It's under pressure, or maybe somebody is blasting and, you know, the water's coming up. But they made it quite clear that, no, Richard Allenby is wrong. You know, Dr. John Freeman, I'll say the names again, and Dr. H. Ken Hills, this is all NASA, no, it was water. It wasn't anything to do with the tanks. And then NASA comes up with the most unbelievable answer out of this and says it was pee.
Pee?
From the astronauts.
Urine.
Urine. And I just have to laugh at that, because, I mean, that is just...
What area did this cover, this urine, and how long did it last?
Yes, that's right. Pee was covering 100 square miles for 14 hours, basically. And, I mean, even people I've met who've been on this programme...
That was some night at the pub, wasn't it, for Neil Armstrong?
Oh, God, yes, yeah. And I met people who'll even use this excuse still, you know, for an explanation. OK, but given that we know there's water on the moon now, I mean, what else does that tell us? I mean, it only simply tells us there's water on the moon. It doesn't tell us there's anybody there drinking it and washing it. No, but it's interesting, because before Apollo, Carl Sagan, many people may not notice this, but in 1962 he was advisor on extraterrestrial life. And, you know, it's quite interesting later, they were interviewed, and Carl Sagan, sorry I'm referring to my notes here because I have to get this right, that Carl Sagan actually said that, you know, when you go to the moon, you've got to remember it's inhabited.
Carl Sagan, the famous American
astronomer.
Carl
Sagan says the moon, this is back in the 1968, the moon is inhabited, and he stated this in a newspaper article. That was followed by Major Patrick Powers, head of the United States Army, interested in this, Army Space Development Programme, saying that when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin step on the surface, they'll be challenged And it's amazing. I didn't say this, by the way. You know, this is what
And
they were saying.
They?
And they were saying it because I had...
No, were they challenged?
Well,
assuming they were.
this is it, because, I mean, there's a general argument that this is the general story, that Neil Armstrong, whether he came down the ladder or not on the Eagle, he steps on the surface and he's got an audience on one of the craters watching. And that's information I've received through sources. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but I find it quite funny that Major Patrick Powers is actually saying that you will be challenged when you get there. It's almost like, you know, that it was staged, there's a whole show going on, and somebody else, whoever they were, was obviously having a good time and was enjoying the show from a much closer view by the look of it.
Yeah, well, we've got a text here I'm going to read out. This is from Mick at Preston. Thank you, Mick. And it's very, very positive. It says, anything that goes against the establishment view will always be debunked or ignored. Thanks for giving an alternative viewpoint. So, thanks, Simon.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, and he's made a good point there as well. Yeah.
So, OK, where are we with this, then? We've got evidence over 200 years of some kind of anomalous activities on the moon. We've got people in positions of power saying there are people on the moon. Yeah. We've got evidence from photographs of anomalous things on the moon. What else have we got? Right,
well, we'll just have a look at this interesting shot, number 8.
Number 8.
Yeah, this is in the region of the... Oh, this is on this side of the moon. This is in the region of the Aristarchus crater.
Right.
And we have here a triangle and a circle. Now...
Well, circles are quite common on the moon, I've got to say.
Common on the moon, but triangles aren't. And this, I find this really fascinating, because this, again, is taken by a lunar orbiter. And from as far as I know, this is the first indication of some sort of underground moon base. And so it's underground, so you're looking at the opening that you would actually go through. And
so you think that's a sort of arched entrance into...
Yes, yeah, it just seems... I mean, you know, I've got a telescope, you know, I've got friends with telescopes, you know, I've got absolutely hundreds of books on the moon and astronomy, and, you know, you look at all the pictures and you don't see triangular ones.
No, you don't.
Not as good as that.
No, that's true, you don't. So, OK, I mean, it could be something natural, but it doesn't look very likely, does it?
No, no, and if we go to number 7, this is even more interesting.
And this have to be quick, because we're going to go for a break in a minute.
Are we? Right, number 7?
I don't think we've got time for that.
Right,
we're going for a break now. So, once again, if you'd like to text in your questions or comment, welcome back to On the Edge with me, Theo Chalmers, and my special guest, Simon Lewis, talking about what might be on the moon. I've got a couple more texts here. I've got, where do you stand with the view that the moon is man-made object, brought here from another part of our solar system 11,000 years ago? And that's from Ian in North Wales.
Could be. Don't know.
Could be, don't know. That's a pretty quick answer. And Steve in Halewood, I suppose that might be short for Stephen, I don't know. Have you seen the book Somebody's on Our Moon?
That sounds like George Leonard, which was published in the 70s, which is a fantastic book, which talks very much about what I'm talking about.
Same sort of evidential.
Yeah, but actually quite good, because he's got a lot of photographs in there which are very questionable, and it's an old book. You know, this is a guy talking about it just after the Apollo programme.
Yes.
You know, you know, for anybody, it's obviously a bit of a collector's piece now, but anybody who wants to search it out, it's worth reading.
Somebody's on our moon. OK, let's move on with more evidence then. Let's
go back to that picture, yeah.
Let's go back to that picture. Which one do you want to go to? Number 7 this time?
Number 7's a good one,
Let's go to number 7.
Right, it's quite interesting, this one, because this is... there's a lot of arguments over this. Right, the official line is, from most astronomers, that this is a meteorite hitting the surface and skimming along.
And making that trail.
And making the trail. The problem is the trail is more like a track. Now, I do apologise to everybody watching that it's not a brilliant picture, but there are other pictures, but you have to get permissions, and it's quite difficult, because there are people who own these pictures, which were, I don't know how they got them, but what destroys the whole meteorite theory is on one of the pictures it does a sharp left and goes up a crater. So...
Well, it could have hit a rock on the ground.
It could have done, yes, but it does a nice sharp left and then just continues on its journey. I would have thought...
Did it indicate?
Well, if there are indicators on there, I can't see them, but...
So what do you think it is, then, Simon?
Well, I think it's some sort of tracked vehicle, and it's doing some sort of operation.
It's big, isn't it? I mean, I don't know what the scale is, but
well,
it looks like it might be extremely big.
Yeah, this is huge. You're looking at the size of probably something like one of these huge lorries that works in these mines, you know, with wheels...
in the open cast mines.
Open cast mines,
The wheels are the size of 10 people.
Exactly, yeah. So this is a huge vehicle. You know, I presume, what we presume is doing survey work.
It's got a shadow as well, hasn't it? Quite a big shadow if you look at it.
Yes, yeah.
OK, well, let's move on from that. Is there another picture you particularly want to show?
Yes, I just want to sort of point out to people about this patent from 1975.
Oh, this is image 9, isn't it?
Yeah, which is quite interesting, actually, because this is called the Subsaline 100 drill, which is nuclear-powered. Have we got a picture?
Number 9, image 9.
Number 9.
Number 9.
There we are. Now, quite interestingly, this was patented and works, and we believe they're using this actually on Earth, because what this is designed for is the moon to bore holes in the surface, turn rock to glass to give you a solid glass surround. And
so we could build glass tunnels on the moon.
Glass tunnels. Are they
Which would
doing
be
this?
Airtight,
as
presumably.
far as we know, they are doing this on Earth with this particular machine.
OK.
This is patented as working.
And this is in 1970 something?
1975.
75, so it's quite a long time ago. They've plenty of time to perfect it, haven't they?
They have, yes, yeah.
And it has a nuclear core.
Yes, nuclear-powered, yeah, which obviously is very arguable over the use of nuclear things in public domains.
OK. Right, I think it's time to get to our film evidence, don't you?
It is, yeah.
I think I'm getting a bit excited here. OK, what we're going to do, first of all, we're going to show you a clip. This is a NASA clip of Apollo 16 on the moon, and it's clip number 1. If we can show that clip first.
You want to take off and go that way now? Yeah. Hey, John, did you make those little footprints here around the sun? Yeah, I guess I did. Right then. Ah, the old footprints on a crater rim. There's a good rock right there. Look at the size of that rock. I thought this thing was just right next door to us. Well, Tony, that's your house rock right there.
So this is Duke and Young, is it, in Apollo 16, and they're talking about. One asked the other, did you make those little footprints?
Yes, it's quite fascinating.
Seems a bit odd, since there's only 2 of them there.
Exactly,
They would know where each other had been, wouldn't they?
You would have thought so, yeah, because, I mean, I presume they're heading towards the rover, which has the camera on.
Yes.
What's interesting about this is, first we get, you know, are those your small footprints? Small, you've got to remember they've got quite big feet.
Big boots on, yes.
Yeah, he answers with, well, I guess so he's not sure. And then we're followed by some sort of, I'm almost feel as though he's going to start singing something, the old footprints. He says old, which is even more unusual. They're heading on round the crater. They come towards the rock, which looks as though they've just got there, which makes it rather difficult when there must be a camera already in position.
OK, well, that wasn't our world exclusive, but this number 2 is, if you like. So if we can show clip number 2, because it's the same piece of film from the same source from
really
NASA.
Some crater.
As you come around there's a rock in the near field on this rim that has some white on the top of it. We'd like you to pick it up as a grab sample.
This one right here?
That's it.
This one right here?
That's it. You got it right there.
So there's the same exact clip from the same exact source from Apollo 16, sourced from NASA, but with a completely different dialogue track on it. So somebody didn't like that thing about the footprints.
No. What's amazing about this footage as well is when you come towards the end of it, he seems to repeat himself, almost like it's been audioed over.
Dubbed. Well, they said that's it. They said that's it twice. Didn't they? Exactly.
And it's interesting. Although we haven't got time this evening, but there are bits of footage around where they seem to have used the same sentences to dub over different areas. And of course it's so easy to dub over because they're on the moon.
Well, you can't see their lips moving.
You can't see the lips moving, no. So I think we can follow on with some more footage.
Yes, which one would you like? Number 3?
Yes, I think of Duke, I believe, here.
This is also
They look
16.
like drill holes is what they look like. You do that in West Texas and you get a rattlesnake. Here you get...
Right, so this is amazing. This is the same guy who was talking about footprints earlier. He's now looking at a rock, and the first thing he says is, these look like drill holes. And I just find it amazing. You know, they're on the moon, and he's so specific with the way he says that. Now, what's interesting is, you know, with NASA, when they were doing all the missions, they were using all sorts of tricks to fool you. Delayed tape technique. So, delaying conversations, frequency changes. That's where the amateur, you know, ham radio were able to lock in on incredible conversations, talking about tracks, talking about watermarks, talking about ploughed fields, you know, all these strange things were said. And what's amazing is NASA seemed to be quite honest. Dr. Farrokh El-Baz, NASA foremost scientist, actually admits that not everything will be talked about on the moon, and we will use codes if necessary, so you can't tell what we're talking about. And in my book, you will read some of the codes. It's there's the book.
Look, two-faced moon. If you just put the camera on me for a second, there's the two-faced moon. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so you can read in there about the codes. So they actually talk a language which is totally unknown to most of us. So Otto Binder, then, the former space program member, says that unusual conversations took place, but we're not going to tell you what they were.
But we caught some of them, obviously, because we got that one about the drilled holes.
We caught some of them, but these two guys were saying that if we were talking about something you weren't to hear, then we openly admit it, but we're not going to tell you.
OK, well, let's look at clip 4 now. This is another clip with interest.
Yeah, I think this is Apollo 17.
Perhaps it's because so many people on the Earth were focusing their attention. They were maybe sending signals to us somehow.
Well, yeah, this is
I sense, I guess, in a way, much like maybe the first man on the Earth would have.
I said, oh, so it's not the rover. Well, NASA made it quite clear they haven't got time to be going backwards and forwards and across and this way and that way.
I think it's worth seeing that one again, actually. I don't know if it's possible to show that one again, that clip 4 again. This time we look at the ground.
Now, I must point out, Richard Hoagland
so many
has
people on
actually...
the Earth
he's got a photograph showing very similar on the side of a mountain. So you've got this very unusual markings, and they actually, in the book, there's an actual conversation where they're talking about this.
Well, what could they possibly be? Because it's certainly not an asteroid that's rolling along this time, is it?
Well, from one of the conversations, it seems that somebody had been doing something before they got there, because they're certainly saying, oh, you know, this is strange.
Perhaps they laid out a picnic for them.
They could have done, yeah. It's so strange because they actually talk, the astronauts, about it looks like somebody's been ploughing out here. And we have a bit of footage which looks like somebody has been ploughing.
But we haven't got it now.
We haven't got it now.
We haven't got that one.
No.
OK. So I've got another text here from Brenda from Hull. Hello, Brenda. She says, I don't believe anyone's been on the moon. So I don't know whether that's the NASA astronauts you don't believe have been to the moon, which is a theory which is not incontestable, or that there are aliens there. I don't know. Well, I mean...
Well, you know, this is the big question. You know, everybody's always saying, are we alone in the universe? Well, when you think about the moon and its strategic position, you know, if I was somebody somewhere else and I had the technology to get here, I mean, what a perfect place to just plonk yourself and just watch us.
Well, it's very easy to hide around the back, isn't it? Because it never turns around, it never faces the Earth. So you can do whatever you like. You can build great big factories there if you like.
Yeah, exactly.
Spaceports and shopping.
And the funny thing is...
Space shopping.
Yes, well...
You're like Turtle.
We're not sure it goes that far, but the funny thing is, you know, there are pictures that exist. You know, a chap called William Cooper, who's an ex-military guy of the US, I think it's Air Force or maybe Navy, he actually has the original photographs of the backside of the moon. And he actually has areas which show greenery and things growing. And if you think that's crazy, a famous astronomer, H. Pickering, back in the last century, he's actually observed this through a telescope.
What greenery?
Things moving which seem to be vegetation. Now, he was such a big guy at the time.
Shrinking in the season.
Seasonal.
Seasonality.
He stuck his neck on the line. You know, he was a big guy at the time, and to say, I think I've looked at vegetation, was quite something.
Yeah, well, I've got another text. This is from Chris in Taunton, and he says, if the astronauts agreed to silence before they went, why would they mention things that would incriminate them, i.e. the drill holes?
Well, I think there's a bit of a game going on, because I think there's a game of, you know, people who want us to know things.
So, like whistleblowing?
Whistleblowing, exactly, yeah. And they're going to make, mistakes.
Comments. Are those your little footprints along the crater's ridge, those old footprints?
But they're still sensitive, obviously, about something, because
they're not saying specifically, oh look, that's where some aliens have been walking.
No,
they're simply saying, oh, are those your footprints? Or oh, look, these look like drill holes.
But you don't go all the way to the moon if there's supposed to be two on the surface and ask the daft question in the first place, do you? So, you know, it's
a bit unlikely that those footprints wouldn't be theirs unless they already knew.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's the same guy who talks about the drill holes later. He's really got a problem running.
Which one is he, Duke?
Duke, yeah, he's really got a problem running with. He's asking all these questions, and he's still not letting it go, because he's now saying, "What are these drill holes?" I think it's quite amazing. You know, it does. A question has to be asked. Are they alone up there? And I mean, obviously, we can go down the avenue. Is it all filmed in a studio or on Earth? You know, obviously, there is that point of view.
Well, that's possible too, isn't it? That's the problem,
is possible.
It is possible. There's all these different things.
Yeah.
Who knows what technology have we got? You know, are there aliens? Is it Earth technologies? Are there people on the moon? Are they Earth people on the moon? Did they even go? Did they go in the way that they said they went? Were any of the films real? Were they all faked? Were some faked?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, you know, you've got Neil Armstrong with his first footstep, you know, and he ends, you know, for all of mankind. And then you've got Dr. Farrokh El-Baz and Otto Binder saying, oh, no, but, well, we'll tell you so far. So how can it be for all of mankind if we'll only tell you what they want you to hear? And this is the general problem, because that's the way they've run it from the start.
Yeah, well, I've got another question here from Mick in Preston. I think he's the one who texted before. He said, a classic code is when one of the astronauts says, Houston, there really is a Santa Claus, possibly referring to them being observed. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, it's a very good point made there, yes, yeah. You know, that's coded in a way that... for somebody else to understand.
So Houston would know that Santa Claus means...
Yeah, it would be written down as something else. And this is what, you know, Dr. Farrokh El-Baz mentions, you know, talking in code and, you know, talking with different sentences, you know, and he's honest about it as well. And he's NASA's foremost scientist saying that at the time.
So where are we going with all this in the minute we've got left?
Right, the minute we've got, where we're going with it is obviously, from the evidence that we've shown, there's something going on the moon which we're involved in. Whether or not it's involved with another civilization, I can't really be specific on that.
Simon, we've got to end it there.
Okay.
That's all we've got time for. Thank you to everyone for watching and for those who texted. And thanks to my special guest, Simon Lewis.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this show, please tell all your friends. Next week, we're broaching a subject that few are even aware of, the growth of an organisation called Common Purpose, which is steadily building critical mass at the highest levels of our political and commercial structures. Remember, they're watching you, watching us, watching them. Cheerio. Apparently, NASA has just admitted that all 6 manned moon landing missions between July 1969 and December 1972 were entirely faked, with the astronauts in low Earth orbit the whole time. In an official statement, NASA says, we were forced to fake all the moon landings because former President John F. Kennedy had promised a man on the moon by the end of the 60s, and our technology at the time simply could not deliver that ambition. We deeply regret deceiving the people of America and the world. Wow. Well, actually, none of that newsflash is true. But here to talk about the moon landings, fake or not, is my very special guest, Marcus Allen, UK publisher of Nexus magazine. Welcome, Marcus.
Thank you, Theo. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you here. And I'd like to just show everybody first the thing that you produce every 2 months, which is, this is the latest edition. It came out today, actually. So I'm thrilled to have a copy. Thank you.
Good.
But also, some of the things we're going to be talking about today, or tonight, are what happened on the moon, this DVD.
Right.
Which was produced by David Percy and Mary Bennett, and which is, I think, a very fascinating DVD. And it actually has your name on the front. It says here, stunning, blows apart the accepted version of Apollo, Marcus Allen, UK editor, Nexus magazine. So you obviously have an opinion, and you're obviously in with these people, so I'm interested in what you say. And I also wanted to show this book, which is called Dark Moon, which I was given for Christmas a few years ago. and it's basically the companion book for this video, this DVD. So, Marcus, give me a little bit of background. How did you get involved with the people who made this DVD? What sort of dawned on you about the moon landings that you were prepared to support this expose of apparent fake moon landings?
Well, like many people, I was around and watched, well, not watched, I got up in the middle of the night to watch the television broadcast live from the moon.
Me too.
We were told.
Me too.
And for many years after that, from 1969, for the best part of 20 years, I thought, oh, wonderful, great achievement. Well done, America. You've done it. Kennedy said, do it. Well, you did it. And then I heard somebody talk about it. It was actually an American guy I heard actually talk about the moon landings didn't actually happen the way that we were told. And I thought, well, this is a bit weird. Now, I'd been trained as a photographer. I'd used Hasselblad cameras, and I realized... Which
is the make of cameras used on the moon, by the way.
They use Hasselblad cameras on the moon. And I thought, well, I'll have a look and see if I can prove this guy wrong, because, you know, I like the idea of man landing on the moon.
Yeah.
Now, the more I looked at it, the more I found, no, there are real problems here. But then I heard that David Percy and Mary Bennett were putting a DVD together. Well, initially they were writing the book, Dark Moon. And by the way, the title is very interesting. The title refers to the fact that if Apollo 13 had actually landed without going off course and exploding and all the rest of it, if they'd actually landed where they were supposed to land, when they were supposed to land, the landing site would have been in darkness.
Really?
Hence Dark Moon. Now,
well, that's a bit of an error then, unless, of course, they never planned to land there in the first place.
Well, I think you got it there. I think your news flash, by the way, is closer to the truth than many people would like to admit.
Since 1995, over 26,000 international students from all walks of life joined the British investigators' training courses in anomalous phenomena, including ufology, paranormal and supernatural, parapsychological study, anomalous phenomena, science, hypnotherapy, spiritualism, astrology, astronomy, cryptozoology, and many other areas. Our certified self-study courses will teach you how to assess, analyze, engage, formulate, document, and be cognizant of all types of phenomena, suitable for light workers and starseeds, curious personalities and inquisitive minds, skeptics alike and truth seekers. For more information, please visit www.stellaruniversity.com.
I'll be talking with author and researcher Simon Lewis, who has written a book called The Two-Faced Moon about...
...programme was all about going there and having a close look, and it was staged. You know, there's clear indications that, you know, from the start of the Apollo programmes and even before then, that NASA was up to something else. And from leaked documents, which we've looked at in the 90s, the National Security Agency was well and truly involved running the Apollo space programme.
So it wasn't NASA, it was NSA. It was NSA,
yes,
not NASA.
Well, as we know, NASA stands for Never a Straight Answer. You know, well, they had somebody else running it.
NSA doesn't even exist officially.
It doesn't even exist officially. So, you know, we must always never forget that the Apollo astronauts were military trained. You know, you're talking about a military operation here. Sticking 3 blokes onto the end of a rocket takes a lot of courage. Arguments are, did it go there? Yeah, I understand all of that on the hoax scenarios. As far as
even the hoax scenario allows for the possibility that they did go. It's just that the images that they presented.
There was a huge network of groups. So you had these organisations all cooperating and obviously dealing directly with the public over unusual sightings. We all had a little job. Mine was aircraft and identifying them, and also trying to help people identify what they'd actually seen in the skies, which in some cases could be explained, in other cases went under the category of unidentified. Okay. And in most cases they were identified. So that led on to which was termed as the flying triangle in its day, which was connected with military and unknowns, because of course I wouldn't be sat here if it wasn't about unknowns. And from there, we started coming across things to do with the moon. And this was a rather amazing subject that possibly we went to the moon, and looking at the evidence which I've got, we had already been, there was somebody already there was an indication of artefacts, and just about
what might be lurking in the craters on the so-called dark side of our nearest neighbour. Tonight we've even got a world exclusive to show you, well, technical gremlins allowing, that has the potential to make worldwide headlines. So what a show we've got tonight. Simon, welcome to our frazzled start.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me onto the show.
Not at all, not at all. I'm going to show the camera your book. This is your book, The Two-Faced Moon.
Yeah, that is.
If you can see that. You describe this as a search for the truth. So let's have a little bit of background about you and your search.
Right, well, it all started basically with a flatmate that I was introduced to. We shared a flat. He'd worked in the military in the past, and he told me these incredible stories, which at first I thought, this can't be true, but anyway, he persuaded me. And from there, that was from the 80s into the 90s, I started getting involved in the actual subjects, and I joined a group called the North Lancashire UFO Investigation Group, and at the time, everything conceivable, you think about it and you're not going to be wrong, because it's all there.
I think it's important to state that we did do a programme a little while ago on this channel about moon landings and looking at faked evidence, if you like, looking at the photographs, the still images from the moon, looking at the films from the moon. And a lot of them, there appeared to be evidence that they were not shot on the moon. They may have been shot somewhere else. Now, it's not mutually exclusive necessarily with your theories that there are structures on the moon and people on the moon. Maybe they're not human, because it could be that that's why they faked the moon shot. So I don't know how you want to kind of reconcile those two.
Well, it's a good point made there. I mean, I must make it quite clear that I've never actually found any evidence to indicate, to put the word alien in there, but there's certainly, from the evidence that we've looked at, indications that the moon has been visited, whether it's by us or somebody else. That's the big question. And as far as I'm concerned, the Apollo